Do you hear me, Anders?
Yes, hello. Yes, I can hear you.
Just to make a short introduction for you, and you can present. You are a professor of scientific visualization in the Department of Science and Technology of Linköping. It's in Sweden, and you are interested a lot with multi-touch surfaces to help for anatomical education. So c'est important, c'est la technologie des multitouches et des surfaces tactiles qui va aider, c'est les outils fondamentaux pour la réalité, l'enseignement de l'anatomie. Merci, Anders. Can go on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to present. I am not going to share my screen, but you will be seeing my presentation like this. So if you pinpoint me to make sure that you can see me on a large screen here, that would be good. Thank you. Yes. So yes, the title of my presentations is Multi-Touch Surfaces and Patient-Specific Data for Surgical Training. And just to provide you with a little bit of a context of where I am actually sitting, I am located in Sweden at something called the Norrköping Visualization Center, and this is the premier center for development of visualization and VR technologies in the country of Sweden, with about 200 people working on the technology aspect. And of course, medical visualization has been one of our main applications for many, many years. So I will take you a little bit on a journey, and the journey really starts with the CT devices that are continuously becoming better and better and better. This is a few years ago when our Siemens Force machine, and you can see the data on that machine here as well. Currently, we're just installing a new multispectral CT system as well, which is a very exciting time in terms of medical visualization in general, to get multispectral data with the possibility to resolve different tissue with high resolution from these scanners. But as we all know, what comes out of these scanners is large amounts of data. And over many, many years, I and my research group, we have been developing the fundamental technologies to do what's known as volumetric rendering of this data. So our challenge is really to turn the stack of image data into a virtual representation of the human body, and deal with that in such a way that we can extract organs, that we can extract information about particular aspects of the human body, and doing that in real time, which is of course a challenge when you're dealing with extremely large data. So I always want people, even though I have a medical audience, I always want people to know that there is a lot of equations behind this, and it's a lot of math going on. And also when I tell children about what I'm doing, I want them to see the equation as I am solving this equation, and I'm solving it millions and millions of times per second when you're looking at the screen. And I will do a live demo in a bit, and you will see how this equation is being solved. The light transport inside of the medical data, because that's what we do. We do what we call ray casting, and we shoot rays, virtual rays, through the medical data set, one ray for each of the pixels on our computer screen, and we send that through the data, and we're picking up the information as we are traversing through the data set. And we have to do that, of course, about 60 times per second for each of the pixels on the screen. And this is what we call the volumetric rendering. So this is really the foundation for what I'm going to show you, is the notion of being able to produce live, real-time visualization of high resolution medical data, and do it with a great visual fidelity. And I will show you a few cases of this in a while as well. But again, when I did that, I was solving this equation, and this is one of my messages also to the medical audience, that this is what we're doing all the time. Now, state of the art in terms of volumetric rendering today is what we call photon mapping. And what we are doing here is that we are showering the data sets with virtual photons, and we're letting them bounce around, and we are picking up the energy that's deposited by these virtual photons inside of the medical data. We are getting to the point when it's looking very realistic, and perhaps the clinical relevance of pictures that are realistic is not as high, but it's certainly very interesting from a research perspective to develop these things. Now, what we are also doing is that we are currently playing a lot with time result data and applying these high-end rendering methods to produce realistic images where the light conditions actually can play a difference in terms of your perception of the medical condition that you are studying. And we're experimenting a lot with light. And as you can see in the middle image here, for instance, we are playing around with light as the carrier of information, for instance, such modalities such as fMRI, to see where you have activation in the brain during a real-time live fMRI scan, for instance, which is very exciting work to do. Now, there's been a number of advances over the past 15 to 20 years, I should say, in terms of looking at volumetric rendering of real patient data. And to some extent, we have been driving the forefront of this from my group and implementing it as we have been going along, because we do have a center for medical image science and visualization very nearby, with about 50 different radiologists that are working with us very, very closely. And the head of that department is one of the very senior radiology researchers in Sweden, Anders Persson, who is also a collaborator in many of these projects. Now, what we did back in 2006 was that we conducted a couple of the first full body virtual autopsies of real patient data. And also what we did with these full body virtual autopsies, we were pushing the limit on what we could do. We also got our hands on one of the very first touch tables, a surface that you could touch data on. This is long before there were iPhones on the market or we had iPads. So we were really pioneering the effort in terms of putting multi-touch technology. And what we did was that we took those algorithms that I just showed you. We took those algorithms and we put them on the touch table. We did some user interface design, and all of a sudden we had a new way of working with the medical data. And what I'll show you here now is a video that we put out on YouTube just a few months after we had produced the first virtual dissection table. And of course, this got a lot of comments because this was the first time that you actually saw anyone starting to touch medical data on a large screen, a large surface of this kind. What I thought that I would do now is actually why show you a video of this when today I can actually, just by pushing a button on my computer, I can go live and I can actually show you how that is being done. So let me just do that. So I'm transitioning here and now we are live, and this is my laptop that's now running the piece of software that I just showed you the video of. And I will bring up that very accident, the traffic accident from 2006 that we started out this project with. And my computer is loading that now. So here's about 6,000 slices of image data that I'm interacting with. And you should just imagine that you're doing this on a very large touch surface at this point. And here's the possibility to peel off layers of the data and look at the interior. And this particular case, which is a virtual autopsy, and I should say it's always with the greatest respect for people that have died during tragic circumstances that I am showing these data sets, but they are very interesting. It's a traffic accident, and here you can see that we can read a little bit about what actually happened in this accident. Here's the main fracture down here. And to make this rather long story very short, what I can do is identify interesting fractures. And the most interesting one is actually the one that we find up here on the jawbone, where you can see that there has been a damage to the skull. If you find a damage like that, you might suspect that something has happened in the neck. And let me just bring up and show you that I can cut through the data, and I can cut through the neck, and I can bring up a close up on the neck here, and you will see here's the cause of death, the broken neck right up here. And of course, these virtual autopsies then turned into something that was really taken up by many different groups worldwide. We have conducted about 10,000 virtual autopsies so far, and all the forensic cases in our region are being transported to the hospital, and we're doing CT scans and virtual autopsies, which really aids in the in the process of doing the criminal investigation. But let me just bring up another case as well, because there are, of course, many cases that I can show you here. But to save some time, let me just pick one here with a very interesting patient case. So here's a patient who is currently waiting for a heart transplant. And there's a heart pump that has been surgically inserted here as well. And it's now very easy to peel off the layers and to identify and see where the pump is sitting. Let me cut a little bit on the side like this and bring up the data like this. And here you can see the pump is located on the inside here. And I think it's very nice how you can get a feeling for the anatomy. And if I rotate a little bit, you get a feeling for the three-dimensional structure of the data as well. And in fact, if I take this particular data set and I cut it from the other side, you can also bring up, you can see very nicely, you can see the aorta going around on this side over here and how it connects to the spine. And if I also add representation of the respiratory system, you can see the lung tissue here as well overlaid, and you can get a very nice feeling for the anatomy and the functions inside here. And this is real live patient-specific data that I'm showing here, which is of course very exciting to be able to show you this. Now, let me continue my presentation and show you. So here we go. Now, what happened, of course, was that we got a lot of attention based on this, and back in 2010, and we were very happy about that. But what we also did was that we connected with one of the medical companies in Sweden that was producing PACS systems for radiology departments and selling that worldwide, Sectra Intech. And they picked up on the idea and started manufacturing the table. And what you can see now is here the table, which really allows the group interaction in the same way as you would have a dissection table. Or you can also tilt it and you can look at it and you can project the same content onto the wall if you would like to. And this is the current form factor that we have of the table today as it stands in 2021. A few numbers on where this has taken us. In this table, the version that I showed you here is a slightly simplified interface. In the version that we are selling through the company Sectra, there's a full medical workstation capability embedded inside of the system. With data access, image processing, visualization, interaction. There are packages for education and training, and there's an education portal for community building as well. And there are about 10,000 of these tables that are being pushed out into 50 different countries worldwide. So I think this is an example of how you can, in a very short time, go from very fundamental, almost mathematical research on how to solve equations, going out and have an impact in the medical community using visual representations and touch technology. Now, if we look a little bit closer at this, there is, of course, as you saw in my demonstration, there's all of these controls that you would like to have. It's the scroll, the zooming, the cut with the fingers, the dissection, which sort of resembles the real interaction that you would have with a real human cadaver as well. And in many ways, we have shown that this reduces the learning curve and helps users to get much more comfortable with the software because it has the touch interface, which is very intuitive. There is a complete set of tools in there in terms of cutting, slicing, doing measurements, labeling, segmentation, even artificial intelligence-based segmentation, and also the more traditional stack views that you would like to have if you're a professional radiologist as well. Very dynamic interfaces for labeling, and you can have the complicated labels with multiple layers of labels that you can identify, and you can curate your data and you document your findings in these patient-specific data. Now, one of the true powers of this is, of course, in the situation where you have an anatomy lab situation, when you have a virtual dissection going on. So this, of course, allows you to dissect at the same time a cadaver and to repeat a dissection from cases on the table. But the real thing is that you can interact with real bodies. And one of the key things here is that you can show a lot of different anatomical variations, because the models, the standard models that we have, are not sufficient in terms of conveying the variation that you would like to train future medical professionals with. And this is one of the main things, that are one of the main reasons for using real patient-specific data in educational situations as well. And of course, as we know, dissecting real human cadavers is something that is a very scarce thing today in medical training. But here we can replace that to some extent, at least. We can also provide you with what's known as the problem-based learning situation, that you can develop critical thinking and also work in terms of developing your teamwork skills, because you are solving problems jointly together in a context which is a social context around something that resembles the clinical situation as well. Beyond the anatomical training situation, we also have so many different cases for doing the clinical training with real dimensions, real pathologies, real patients, and you can even do a simulated surgery situation and develop different training programs if you want to specialize in radiology, in surgery, general medicine. All of those packages are available in terms of interacting with human cadavers. Now, of course, we did a lot of studies on this. Just to bring up one of the studies that we conducted is an evaluation that was conducted with 5 orthopedic surgeons in terms of their perception, the overall impression of working with the touch table. And of course, surgical planning for orthopedic surgeons is a dream case in some sense, because you have complex 3D geometries and you really want to interact with the bone structures. So as you can see, the overall impression is very high. The only places where we're getting slightly lower scores is when you look at the efficiency for surgery, because of course it's an added stage in the workflow situation that you have to deal with as well. Now, as a little twist to this whole story, and I did bring this up in the book chapter as well, what has happened here is that it's not only in the medical context that this technology has had an impact, and perhaps an even bigger impact is outside of the hospital wall, because what happens here is that museums all over the world got interested in using the same technology. Places like, for instance, the Natural History Museum, where there are millions and millions of artifacts with a very interesting interior. If you CT scan all of these objects, you can produce extremely interesting visualizations that you can bring out into the gallery and show people. If we're looking at human cadavers, the British Museum has a large collection of mummies, and we started working together with the British Museum and did virtual dissection of the mummies. And here's the Gebelein man, a 5,500-year-old mummy that we virtually dissected, and we actually found out that it was a murder case, and we even found the murder weapon after 5,500 years here. So if you go to the British Museum today, you will actually see these tables being deployed in Gallery 64, and we have millions and millions of users every year in many, many different museums worldwide. If you're interested in reading more about how the development of medical visualization on touch surfaces has generated this huge impact outside the hospital, there's an article in a magazine called Communications of the ACM in the December 2016 issue, where you can read more about the Gebelein man and all of the things that we found around the mummies and beyond that. Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anders.
Thank you, Anders. Very interesting talk. I hope we have some questions from the audience, from the 3 last speakers, or for the 2 first speakers about anatomy. Not only for Luc Soler, you can also ask questions for other people, other speakers, please. They are mostly surgeons. So you see technologies and computers and virtual reality is not their daily practice, but they will go to this. They will come to this.
This is a question for. Hello?
You have a question, short question, and then I will give Vincent Delmas would like to make a conclusion. So please, Joachim, very shortly, or somebody has a question. We have just 1 minute to be on time.
Yes, question for ophthalmology, of course.
Yes. For Katarina.
Katarina, yes.
For Katarina, a question.
Katarina, yes, a question destined to Katarina. Yes, the application of what you have shown on your presentation is, I read that it's destined to improve the light quality in different types of houses, of yes, buildings. Could you say something about that? Thank you.
Yes, so this is one of the applications for our work, because we wanted to find out how different lighting systems affect your visual perception if you have a vision impairment. For example, for cataracts, the clouded lens makes light that enters your eye scatter much more and creates these uncomfortable glaring effects that we have also seen in the images. So we simulate this in order to test different lighting systems in virtual reality. So we have this cataract simulation, and we can look at these different lighting systems and find out which ones are more comfortable or more uncomfortable for people with such a vision impairment. And that's how we also found out that indirect lighting is more comfortable for people with cataracts in particular, because you don't have direct light sources in your field of view that could create these glaring effects.
Yes, and also it was very interesting to explain what is a cataract, because it's not only a problem of visual acuity, it's also different types of problems that we encounter. And it was very interesting, and also it could be interesting to explain to authorities, because in old-fashioned system, we had a limit of visual acuity in which cataract surgery indication was made. And in fact, we have some people who have not so bad visual acuity, but they have a lot of problem with light, night lightning, and so on.
Yes, exactly. That's because you have all these different symptoms that really play together. So that's why it's important to have this simulation of the whole disease pattern with all these different symptoms that you can also adjust, because they are different from person to person.
Another question, please. Last one, probably, because the time is running. Another question for Joachim, or? Non? Ah, oui, les questions par le... Oui, tu peux me regarder. Question. Pascal, est-ce qu'elle est là?
On pourrait parler
on peut
aussi...
avoir l'affichage des messages, Pascal, s'il
On
te plaît.
pourrait aussi parler de Rembrandt.
Affiche-nous les conversations, il y a peut-être des messages. Questions, non, il n'y en a pas? D'accord.
Remote questions?
La leçon d'anatomie, oui, en fait, la leçon d'anatomie de la personne qui parlait du Texas, à partir du Texas, je crois.
Oui, le constructiviste.
Oui, c'est ça, le constructiviste. Donc, puisqu'il y a un lien entre l'art et l'anatomie, et donc on retrouve ce lien déjà à l'époque de Vinci, bien sûr, qui a dessiné des écorchés. On le retrouve dans Rembrandt avec la leçon d'anatomie.
Please in English, because she will answer.
Okay, so
Jinsi, a question for you.
Okay. Yes. I was saying that the link between anatomy and art exists since a long time, and of course with Leonardo da Vinci, with Rembrandt, anatomy lesson, and you have shown a new type of anatomy lesson today with virtual realization, and that is what was very interesting.
I assume that comment to me, I don't know.
yes, you have made the same link with a new technology that Leonardo da Vinci did a few centuries ago.
Right, definitely. Yeah, so, the virtual reality we're doing is not separated from what we've been doing, right? So we'd like to connect, physical movement within virtual reality, and the technology can augment that effect.
Yes, there is also a relationship between art, aesthetics, and learning. Learning process is related to aesthetics. So she's working on this topic. Very interesting.
Thank you.
So we can conclude.
Merci
Well,
beaucoup.
it seems there is one question from Mr. Emmanuel. I don't know how to pronounce, but he's been kind of waving his hands.
So, yes. So we are concluding. Thank you very much for your kind participation for all of us. We are very happy to have you, and next time probably we organize something in Paris also. Thank you. Thanks for your kind participation.
As professor of anatomy, it's a pleasure to conclude scientific point of view.
And Professor Delmas from Paris University will conclude this meeting. Thank you.
Very shortly, but
In French.
all the presentations were fantastic and amazing. Thank you very much. You bring a lot of information, a lot of new vision of anatomy. And I just mentioned that anatomy is the name of a technique opening the body. And today, we use the modern tools to open and to understand the body. So we have to endorse all the numeric techniques, and each presentation brings the proof that the anatomy can be seen by the students, by the surgeon, with a new eye. So thank you very much. And you have a question. And thank you very much.
Thanks to everybody. Thank you.
Merci à tous, ça a été une séance passionnante. Merci particulièrement à tous les intervenants, au professeur Hull qui a organisé cette séance et au professeur Delmas qui a eu la gentillesse de la conclure à l'improviste.